So it's like if there's like this, if you can picture like a mirror that's kind of like dividing heaven and earth, and like the upper hierarchies are over here and like mineral nature is over here, the closer you get to the surface of the mirror, it's like the closer the actual essence of the angelic hypostasis is reflected in the creaturely form. So the human being is like the most direct reflection of the angelic form.
The key conception that kind of holds it all together is that he posits throughout the book this idea that angels have a co-humanity and that that human beings have a co-angelicity. And he uses the image of the heavenly Jerusalem,
right,
as kind of his starting point for this line of reasoning, because the heavenly Jerusalem is said to have the measure of an angel and the measure of a man.
Right. He says, let's see, the human measure, which is also the angel's measure, the exposition of these mysterious words of revelation constitutes the chief task of the present work, and in them is expressed the fundamental and sole idea, or its fundamental and sole idea, rather. Like that, the parity between the angelic and the human measure is kind of like the whole essence of this book.
Yes.
And it's like the foundation for this whole entire viewpoint. That quote's on page 161, by the way.
Thank you.
He seems to posit that there's a kind of event horizon at the beginning of time that's analogous to the event horizon at the end of time.
Mm-hmm.
Things become fixed toward the good. So it's like human beings pass over that event horizon and at a certain point achieve a certain fixity toward the good in the eschaton.
Right.
Whereas the good angels have already passed that event horizon for themselves, like at the,
and they're trying to draw us towards it in the case of the guardian angels.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's interesting.
But in Bulgakov, like what he suggests is that essentially what you are judged, obviously all judgment happens through Christ, but also that judgment happens through your own higher self, right? So your guardian angel participates in that judgment, like whether you have conformed to the image of what you were intended to be or not, right? There's a participation of that. But ultimately, for Bulgakov, there is he's an unambiguous universalist. He actually sees the angel Lucifer as, in that same capacity, judging Satan.
I don't remember reading that part.
It's from Sophiology of Death, but I don't remember which essay it's from.
Wow. The idea that there is like this some kernel of original goodness,
correct,
like lying underneath the hypostasis, which is Satan, right?
The corrupted hypostasis, which is Satan, which ultimately has the power in the very end of things, like beyond the end of time, by the way. Bulgakov is very clear that when you're talking about that final restoration of all things, you're talking about the very last of things after the end of time.
Right. The dual eschatological horizon.
Correct. The enemy is not truly conquered, but merely defeated until the enemy becomes the friend. So if the story we're telling is actually the conquest of evil, then it has to result in its transformation as well. Basically, it has to do with not reducing everything to quantity.
I think it links back to what you were saying earlier about the guardian angel kind of like judging the human being in terms of how well the human being sort of conforms to the intention for it, right? Which is laid out in the guardian angel, and that it kind of this sort of like everything being judged by Christ, and this idea of sort of like these syzygic pairs
Yes.
that Bulgakov describes that kind of like form these like syzygic rings of love, like in the chain of being.
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
a great part.
and that's really like the overarching vision I think that Bulgakov puts forward, like in Jacob's Ladder, is these rings.
I think
of
everything
love.
that Bulgakov does is trying to advance the Maximian corpus. I really do.
That's a good point.
He's trying to take the Neo-Chalcedonian theology and to advance it.
Yeah.
To
Well,
the
so
next
he's
stage.
so for Bulgakov, it's like everything that exists has an other, right? Like everything has a friend, like
Right.
both
Yes.
at a horizontal level and a vertical
Right.
level. So like throughout the entire chain of being, there are entities, and they're like, he uses the Gnostic term syzygy, which you could either take or leave, but I think it's actually kind of apropos.
A lot of times, language that we consider Gnostic is actually apostolic language. Bulgakov seems to suggest that everyone has a guardian angel, right? It's not limited to the baptized faithful.
He even goes so far as to say that that is part of the definition of being a human.
Yeah.
At one point, you know, in order to be a human means to have a guardian angel. He goes on to kind of describe that the angels of the Father are those that are kind of most directly turned toward God, right? In like continuous doxology, as he calls it.
Right.
And then the angels of the Word are the kind of like the ideal prototypes, or like the content of the world. And then this is where I think it gets the most interesting, and I think where he is most closely in line with Steiner, where he says that the angels of the third hypostasis of the Trinity are the divine spirit souls, as he calls them. So these are kind of like the words sort of ensheathed in beauty, right? So like, and they take on more particularized form and actually become life forms. So like the angels of the third hypostasis are kind of like the more particularized prototypes for like living beings, is basically what he says.